AI Boardroom episode dose. For those that were part of the inaugural session that we did 2 weeks ago, thanks for coming back. For those of you that are new, welcome. Essentially, I created this as an opportunity for us to help business leaders and executives understand where artificial intelligence can help your organization. Essentially, we want to really start developing AI-driven leaders. Let me know if my screen changed to our purpose.
Yes.
Okay. So just like I did with the first session, could you guys throw a 1 in the chat? Or you could speak up and just say yes if you feel somewhat overwhelmed by all of the AI hype. Maybe it is because it's constantly in your face, or people are constantly talking about AI, and maybe it's difficult to decipher what is real, what is not, what is something that's valuable, and what is a waste of your time. But I'd love to get a chance to see if you guys could throw in the chat if that's true. Yeah. And hopefully for those of you guys that are going to be, and my fingers crossed, consistent attendees of this, we'll start to move away from that feeling. But I get it, right? You know, most businesses, of course, that we speak to are being approached all the time about AI. And of course, it's really difficult to understand without kind of a strategic direction what is best for me, what is best for our organization. And so I created the AI Boardroom again as just a community, one more opportunity, right, for like-minded organizations and like-minded business leaders to get together, talk about AI, what's working, what's not working, and eventually with the goal that everybody hopefully will leave with either better questions to ask, possibly more clear opportunities, you know, to move forward, and again, hopefully better paths forward. And again, I want to make this, you know, we're brand new with this this concept and this platform, but I want to make this really community driven. I'm not going to make people get on their cameras just yet. I'd like to be able to see eventually all of us kind of come together as a community. I know not everybody knows each other. There's a cross section of different types of industries, different type of organizations. But I want this to be an opportunity where people can collaborate and again, build a sense of community around our like-minded approach to utilizing AI to help your businesses. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to briefly talk about kind of what we view as the AI success roadmap that really kind of consists of a 2 or 3 part process, right, of getting the most out of AI. And that's understanding, you know, where you are, where you sit, readiness levels, what are opportunities within your organization where AI can really be useful and helpful and impactful, and then kind of what does that mean from a strategy and a technical perspective. We're going to review the drive prompt framework. And again, last week we talked a little bit about the whole concept of garbage in and garbage out when it comes to AI-based chat. AI chat, of course, is what a lot of people are more accustomed to, right? Which is kind of working with ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, and that's asking questions and getting some answers out. Each week we're gonna kind of showcase based on AI growth and profit assessments, right, that are being done across the industries and different prospects and customers. What are some real world ideas of how to use AI outside of just conversational AI, right? We'll talk about the 2 different pieces where I see AI helping businesses. The drive framework is conversational AI, right, where you're using it as a strategic partner to get questions answered or solve problems or come up with some sort of content. And the automation piece of that is where AI is put into place in businesses where we can reduce time friction in a business, or amplify some sort of function or workflow. The bulk of this conversation today is going to be really about AI readiness. So if you don't have it, grab a pencil, a pen, and some paper. We're going to go through a set of conversations and questions about readiness, and this will be kind of more of a self-score for you to kind of figure out where do you individually sit when it comes to AI. And then we'll do a little bit of salesy stuff at the end, talking about how we can help you with this growth and profit, understanding how to build a strategic plan and governance around AI, and how to build up and help you build out those technical automations and workflows. And then we'll open it up to questions and we'll go from there. Does that sound like a plan to everybody?
Yeah.
All right. So what is the AI roadmap? For us, really, it kind of comes down to three different areas, right? We want to, as an organization, we want to help understand, what preparation steps need to be in place when it comes to utilizing AI and getting the most out of it based on your data and your specific org charts and your specific workflows. So we want to start by developing kind of that business first mindset, and that comes from, of course, education and understanding of what AI is capable of, but it also comes with understanding of what the risk are to your organization by implementing AI, and what are some of the things that need to be put in place regarding guardrails and safeguards and privacy around the data in order to make sure that we're protected when we use AI. Second, we want to identify opportunities. And again, the idea of the AI growth and profit assessment, whether we help you with that or you go through these exercises on your own, is really to identify where in your organization do you see or understand time friction or value friction, and being able to use AI to help reduce that or eliminate that. And that's sometimes more complicated than it sounds. And most organizations have a general idea, right, of what their employees do when it comes to workflows and process, in their day-to-day jobs. But if the organization does not have that well understood or very, very clearly documented, it can be difficult to identify where AI can actually help the most, right? So that's why today's conversation is really going to be on prep and understanding how ready you are. And finally, when you kind of have all that stuff in place and you have a good strategy, good plan, good roadmap, and you're starting to understand and identify where AI can help reduce time or value friction, then we can build out that plan, actually implement those solutions, and then the fun stuff starts, right, where we can actually see the results of this, either in some form of return on that time or money investment, or maybe there are other metrics, right, that we choose to measure when it comes to AI and determining whether or not it's a success. For some, it's truly dollars and cents. For others, maybe it's reduction in time or mistakes. For others, it may be, okay, we put this stuff into place. Now we can reallocate our existing human employees to different tasks, right, that help the business. Or it's maybe, how do we use AI to reduce employee stress and burnout and manage retention, right? So that's really the AI roadmap. And, we're going to be talking about this every single week that we do this, and different pieces of that. So how does AI really help organizations? And this slide will be familiar, that we talked a little bit about this last week, but we view AI in two different types of help, right? Number one, uh, it allows organizations or individuals to solve problems, generate ideas, or create something. And that's typically done through some form of AI chat, right? So maybe it's ChatGPT, maybe it's Copilot, it could be Perplexity, any number of tools, right? And that is where you ask a question from your AI, I call it a thought partner, right? And you get ideas. And of course, this is something that I use absolutely every single day, right? I utilize, our access to our large language models, whether it's Copilot within our own Microsoft tenant, or ChatGPT, or Perplexity for research. It doesn't matter, right? But this is something that I use every single day. And so how do you get the most out of that, right? And last week we talked about the drive principle. We'll do a little reminder of that here in a second. But ultimately, we want to be able to provide good prompting, right? Good input to the AI to be able to get good output. Put a 1 in the chat if you guys are using AI in that capacity. You ask questions, you try to get answers, you try to build something. I'd love to see what people are doing if people are using it that way. Yeah, a lot of people, right? And I think that this is the most common way, and honestly, I think the best way to dip your toe into AI, right, within your organization. Rob, I love it. It's important just to get started. Um, I think everyone kind of has, and if you haven't had that aha moment yet with AI chat, I encourage you to keep working through the drive principle that, again, that we're going to be talking about, and we're again here in a second, because ultimately, what I found, right, when I first started to experiment with, let's just say, ChatGPT, I would ask very simple questions and I would get very simple answers, and I'm sure you guys can probably relate to that. So the idea, of course, is to be able to mature in how you frame your problems and the information that you want to receive in response to those problems. And again, we'll go through this in a second, but I think that this is the best way for people to start with AI, and that's kind of how we started. Amber, I think you can probably back me on this, right? When we first started to talk to Jeff Woods, right, who wrote the book AI Driven Leader, all of us had experimented with ChatGPT, but then all of a sudden he had us look at it from a prompting perspective that was mind blowing, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's, before I think it was just kind of looked at as maybe like a little bit of a Google, or, higher step Google, but seeing how to like actually drive in further to what you're looking for and have a true conversation versus just help me find this. Yeah. The whole room. It
Yeah.
wasn't just us. It was the whole room. Everybody's
Right.
just like,
And
it's
think
amazing.
about that. Who was in that room, right? So it was
Right.
probably like 200
Yeah.
IT, cybersecurity, and technical experts, right?
Yep.
And that was our response. And we're talking about what? Not even a year ago.
Right.
And so, you know, right? Yeah. And so I think about that, right? And again, it's, if you have not had that aha moment with AI chat, um, let's have a separate conversation, right? But the moment when you figure out how to prompt your circumstance, and then through iterative follow-ups to get what you want is where you see that aha moment. Um, the second way that I feel, or that we feel, that AI, right, has an important role to play, again, is in around automation and intelligence that is based on either identifying and reducing or eliminating time-intensive workflows, or you know, you could look at it like that, or you could look at it like augmenting or potentially replacing repetitive type job functions, right? So on number 2 on the screen, I kind of break it down into two typical ways of looking at this, right? In any of our businesses, we have human employees, right? And they do jobs, you know, they have jobs and they have responsibilities, right? Job descriptions generally are fairly vague, right? So when you hire for a position, you're looking for some set of skills. And oftentimes, of course, those set of skills may or may not line up directly with the specific workflows that job has to do. And an example is, you know, we maybe need a marketing analyst or whatever, and one of the jobs, one of the job description might be help us market our product or service, right? And I know that's a dramatically oversimplification, right? But essentially that's what we do when we hire, right? You put a job description on Indeed, it's like maybe a page long. It has a few bullet points and it kind of talks about what you want. Ultimately, though, as a business leader, you have a end goal outcome expectation, right, for that job that you're hiring. And it could be, in the case of the marketing professional, it could be generate, you know, we want this role to help us generate 25 new leads a month or something, right? You have an outcome goal. Now, in order to accomplish that outcome goal, right, that person or that job has a set of workflows, right? And that could be, they need to post on all of our social media channels 3 times a day with relevant educational content, right? That could be one workflow of a marketing analyst job role. So when I look at the AI automation piece of this, number 2, we're either looking at it from a workflow perspective, right? Identifying those specific workflows. So any one job that you have in your organization, right, could have several workflows. So, you know, whether you're the CEO of a business or you're an intern, right, your day-to-day job has certain things that you are supposed to do every single day, some things you're supposed to do every single week, some things you're supposed to do every single month, right, et cetera. And that could be 5, 10, 20 different actual things, right? You build standard operating procedures around that. You train people how to do that, right? You delegate those procedures or those processes to somebody. AI can help with those things, right? We can specifically identify some of those workflows that at the end of the day make up a job, a human job, right? And we can help automate those, either help doing them faster or help do those jobs with fewer errors, right? Ultimately, of course, being able to utilize technology to accomplish that same function. And it's a little bit, you know, when you're talking about AI, like we've had automation, right, as part of technology for years and years and years. There's certain things that we can automate, right? So if somebody in my business, if somebody submits a request for support, right, that email or that text message or that phone call comes in, there's automation, right, around creating a ticket within our service desk software. There's some automation around assigning that ticket to a technician, right? And there's some automation around when the technician solves that problem, that person gets an email or some sort of notification and say, hey, we think we solved this. If we did, can you give us a survey? If we didn't, just let us know, right? Like that stuff has been around forever and ever and ever. But what we're now seeing with this automation piece is that we can now add some intelligence to it based on AI. So not only are we able to take advantage of those things that automate the workflow from a ticket request to resolution and feedback, but we can also help the technician be able to troubleshoot that much faster because we can utilize AI to review the request and then help identify what is the best troubleshooting steps. Again, that's just one example. The other way to look at this, again, is from a job role or a job function. So every one of us on this call, well, most of us probably, right? We have an idea which jobs that we need in our business, right? Maybe, maybe we don't have the budget, right, to be able to hire every single job that we wish we could. And so often we're bound by those financial restrictions. So if I'm a business, right, and I have 30 employees, right, but a bunch of those employees are doing multiple things, right? They're maybe wearing multiple hats, or they have more of those workflows that I talked about assigned to them than we would like. We just have to deal with it, right? We know that we can't afford to bring on more people, and so we try to do the best we can, right, with the staff that we have. So the second way of looking at this is if you had your dream organizational chart, right? Whatever your business is, maybe you're looking at it from a department perspective because you're so huge, or maybe you're looking at your entire business holistically. What would your org chart be? And what would those people do, right? And again, much of it is really centered around the idea of specialization, right? You want to have people specialized in certain jobs because they are ultimately better and faster at that. But we often can't do that because of what I mentioned, the recruiting or the budgetary limitations. But if you knew, like, if I had unlimited budget, I didn't need to worry about recruiting or retention, what would my org chart look like, right? So I'm asking on this number 2 on the screen to think of it, either one of those two ways, depending on how you look at it, right? Some days I'm like, this is a workflow problem I can fix with AI, or some days I'm like, this is a whole entire role, right, that I can assign multiple workflows to and have AI handle that. The example that we've used before, right, is the HR specialist agent, right? So we have an AI agent, right, that is trained on all of our businesses, policies, handbooks, anything to do benefits, right? It's trained on all that stuff. So our team and customers can then ask this agent questions about human resources, right? So that is a workflow, right, that an HR specialist would have. I take in questions that our employees have about our benefits and our policies and procedures, and I give them answers, right? So we can create agents around that, but then we can then build upon that and say, okay, besides just answering questions, we could help them enroll in benefits, or we could help them automate some process around taking time off or reporting or any of these types of things. So again, AI chat, great first start. AI automation, depending on how you look at it, is really, really where the money it happens and where the rubber meets the road. So again, this is a meeting full of business leaders, and ultimately, of course, we're here because of AI, but it's really not about AI. It is about business outcomes, right? And this call that we have every 2 weeks, again, this is the second episode edition. I don't know what we're going to call it. We're not going to be talking about specific technology, really. Although that's part of it and ultimately where we need to go. But we're going to really talk about how do we solve business problems. And this is no different than anything that we've been doing in IT for decades. But this is the first time that I've seen in a long time, honestly, since the internet, right, where we have a revolution in technology that has an opportunity outcome that far exceeds the cost, right? A lot of you guys have had conversations with me about cybersecurity and compliance and all this stuff over the years. And most of the time, of course, it's one of these things where either you roll your eyes over, right, or you're like, yeah, I know we need to do this stuff, right? But there's very little excitement around it. We talk about that piece of our business as protection or protect, right? Like it's a foundational part, right? You need to be able to protect your data, and you need to be able to validate that and verify it. Some with compliance regulations, others just because you want to make sure you stay in business. But with AI, which we call propel, right? We are really viewing this as an exciting opportunity that organizations like you guys are able to take advantage of in some direction. So how do we get where we need to go? Well, first is, we want people to start looking at what are your business challenges and be thinking through that. And we have a process called the AI Growth and Profit Assessment, right? That we will walk through organizations, and you can schedule one at any time with me. I'll give you a QR code to do it at the end, but that process goes through a systematic way of starting to identify business challenges, understanding readiness, preparing for the privacy, liability, and security pieces of AI. But we're really starting with the problem and not the tools. The outcome goal, of course, of the AI GPA is to see, are we ready for this? And if not, what do we need to do to be ready? And then what are the things that we can put in place from a technical perspective to solve these business problems? And again, we're not going to talk about that stuff here. That really comes from an implementation and how we actually solve some of these business problems. I just want you guys to be thinking about what are your business problems that need to be solved? Where do you have time or value friction in your business that you want to reduce? Next, we want to build out kind of a strategic approach to AI. And this is becoming more and more important. For those of you guys that have been around business long enough, I hate to date myself, but I feel like I'm 100 years old some of the days. But if you remember in technology, in IT, we started with the chief officer, right? Like this was a role that everybody had in their organization. Most organizations still do. If it's not full-time, it's fractional. That role was responsible for all of the planning, the leadership, the budgets, right? Kind of the direction of technology. And of course, it was simple then, right? We didn't need to really worry about compliance yet. We didn't really need to worry about cybersecurity. AI was not even a thought. But it was just something that we needed some sort of leadership around. Well, as cybersecurity risks started to increase and we started to need more specialization within cyber, that's when we started to see the build out of the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO. And again, for some organizations, they have a full-time CISO, probably pay them like 400 grand a year, right? But for most organizations, it becomes fractional through organizations like North Star or others, right? Where you have that functionality and that core understanding around cybersecurity and management and leadership of that. But it's not the same as the IT. So now you've got IT, which is about capacity and continuity and infrastructure. And then you have cybersecurity, which is around protections and prevention and compliance, right? Well, now we're starting to see the next evolution of that, right? Where AI is rapidly becoming the next area of IT, right? Where organizations need to have some sort of governance and oversight to manage not only the implications of the technology, the cool stuff, right? All the awesomeness that we can do and all the money we're going to save or make, whatever, right? But also the protections and the liability and the controls. We just had a conversation with a law firm client of ours, right? Where in the state of California now, there is a class action against a human resource company that utilizes AI to help select candidates for businesses that are hiring, and obviously it connects people to that are looking for jobs. Well, the AI is believed to have started to discriminate against people older than 40 years old. And so there's this belief that this human resource technology that utilizes AI heavily is biased, right, against older people. And of course, there's conversations around people of color and other minority groups, right, where there's some potential bias around. So how does that stuff get handled? Well, it has to be handled, right, from a strategic perspective, right, where liability, bias management, and some of these other things are controlled or managed, right? Otherwise, this could have equally financial devastating impact as a cybersecurity breach, right? So we are seeing this need, right, to build up that I'm calling it a virtual chief AI officer, right? But some sort of fractional role that helps manage that stuff. And then finally, it's the technology, right? It's the AI platform, right? Which is some sort of platform where you are executing on these things. And that could be the AI chat I talk about, or it could be the AI automations, either in workflows or jobs. So again, the entire purpose of this is to talk about this from a business perspective. And so as you saw in that box, really the only box, right, that was technology was that last one. And that's the last thing that we do. Put a 1 in the chat. I want to see if everyone's awake. If you remember me talking about the drive prompt framework last week. Good. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so what is Drive? So again, if you remember 1 and 2, 1 is the AI chat piece of it, right? This is where I use every single day, right? And I ask multiple AI models different questions to help me solve different problems. And essentially, what this does, it allows us to create better prompts, and this addresses the garbage in, garbage out problem that I talked about. So how does it work? Well, you go to ChatGPT, and if you are on ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever you're using, right, go out to that, right now. And we're not going to go through specific examples. We did that last week, and I still need to get the recordings out to everybody. But essentially, how I structure my prompts is I use this framework. So the D stands for defining the problem or question, right? And so that really is ultimately like, what is it that I'm trying to solve today? So like I've done things like, okay, I need to create a marketing plan for a specific service, or why we have an issue where employees are we're not retaining employees or something, or you can think about any number of business problems that you might have. And so that's where the D is. The R is, of course, is what role should AI play? So this is what type of job? What would you assign that person? You're not going to assign financial analysis of your profit and loss reports to a personal trainer, right? Or the opposite. So you use the R to kind of define the job that AI should assimilate. The I like to use just because it allows, I think, more interesting thought, right, on the problem. So I will just say, interview me, asking 1 question at a time, up to 3 to gain clarity. So for example, you'd be like, I want to get in shape for the summer, and your role should be act as a personal trainer and nutritionist. I say, ask me some questions, up to 3, 1 at a time. The questions might be, what is your current fitness level? Do you have any allergies to certain foods? Do you have a budget, right, on how much food you want to buy in a week, right? It'll just ask those questions. And even by adding that as a prompt, that's helped me redefine future prompts, because I'm like, okay, I never thought about that. And you can add that as context into your prompts. The V is the voice or the tone of the output. Last week we talked about the original Biggest Loser, right? The weight loss show, and how there's 2 different personal trainers. Bob Harper, who was very much empathetic. He was all about making sure that he understood the reasons why somebody may be out of shape or overweight, and takes that more calm and nurturing approach, right, to help his clients. Whereas Jillian Michaels, if you remember, right, she was a tough cookie, right? She was all about get up, like, don't be lazy, like, you got to get this done, right? And of course, many of you guys, I think, probably can relate that you respond differently, right, by different types of conversation or tone. So what works for you, right? Tell your AI chat partner, this is how I want you to talk to me. And again, if I'm writing a stand-up comedy act, right, I want it to be entertaining and funny. I don't want it to be formal and structured, right? But if there's something where I'm like, I got to get to the bottom of this problem, I will tell AI to use the voice or tone of output as hard truth. Like, just give it to me straight. And it will, right? And then finally, of course, is the end game or deliverable. So you want to say, I want a 90-day action plan. I want a 30-day action plan. And of course, it does its own follow-up. Is it, well, here it is. You want me to put it in a format or structure or something. And that's where you can continue to follow up with that. And again, we are we're sort of running out of time, so we're not going to go through any prompt examples. But if you guys find, and this is for my own internal team, right? Like if you guys have some cool prompts that you've done to solve certain problems, we can share that. I want to share that with the group. I have a whole set of prompt library. I probably have 200 or 400, I don't know, maybe it's even 500 different prompts documented for different types of business usage that we provide, of course, for our AI customers. But if there's stuff that you are using and like this really gave me some input or insight, I'd love to hear about it. Quickly, real world examples of AI GPA assessments. Law firm, automation success. A 10-person attorney in Chicago utilized AI automations for intake for client information, and it helped them draft demand letters. We have an organization that is utilizing an AI agent just to create prenuptial agreements for marriages. And again, this is the business problem, right? Like, how do we reduce time friction to do these tasks, to allow paralegals, right, or associates, right, to do more important strategic or more highly billable things. And this one ended up, just because of the size and the number of these things that they take in, ended up saving nearly $6,100 a month. Second case study, time entry and billing automation. This is a 30 attorney firm in New York City. Was losing a bunch of their revenue due to delayed time entry, so they weren't getting stuff into their billing system timely. And as you know, lawyers are all about billable hours. So this solution has an AI agent that monitors communication with clients and auto suggests time entries into their case management system, and then integrates that with billing. These guys recovered like 225 hours a month of billable time, which for a law firm is outrageous. It's a lot of money, right? Again, these are things uncovered through AI growth and profit assessments. All right, last 15 minutes, I want to talk about readiness. Okay, so here is where I want you to get out your pen and paper, because we're going to kind of go through this in question format. So let me get my other screen up here. So section 1 of AI readiness really is around strategic alignment, right? So I'm going to ask a question and I'm going to give 3 possible answers. The first answer, score yourself 1 point. The second, score yourself 3 points. And the third, score yourself 5 points. Does that make sense? All right. So question number 1, how supportive is executive leadership towards AI adoption? I always look at this stuff as not a tech, just like cybersecurity underneath, right? We talked about this with that customer earlier today. These are not technical problems. These are not technology problems. These are business problems. So it all starts with leadership. So number 1, how supportive? Now, first answer, 1 point, no awareness, right? Or they're skeptical. Though the fact that you guys are leaders in your organizations is a good start, right? But 1 point if there's little awareness or there's some skepticism towards AI. 3 points if there's interest, but we just need some clarity, right? We just need to understand it more. And 5 points if these initiatives are fully supportive and leadership, boards, CEOs are proactive champions in this. Write it down. Second question, how clearly defined are your organization's goals for AI, right? half the battle that you're attending this to help, get some understanding, right? But just give yourself 1 point if you don't have goals yet, right? Or they're not clear. Give yourself 3 points if you are exploring some potential use cases. And give yourself 5 points if you have clear objectives that are tied to specific business outcomes. And again, be honest where you're at, right? Because at the end of the day, this is something that you want to make sure you get right. Question number 3, how willing is leadership to invest financially in AI initiatives? 1 point if there is no budget, right? And you see AI as a cost factor, sort of like anything else, cybersecurity, technical support, your office rent, your bookkeeping, whatever, right? Give yourself 3 points if you're exploring potential use cases, right? Which means that there's some understanding and ability to put some investment into this, and give yourself 5 points if you are budget ready and growth focused. The second section is around process and workflow maturity. And we actually have technology stack in that as well. So we're kind of grouping a couple different things here. So question number 4, how well documented are your organization's key workflows? Right? You remember me talking about workflows and job roles? 1 point if you have really no or little documentation. So there's a lot of what I call tribal knowledge, right? So maybe you've got somebody that's been on your team for 15 years. They do their job very, very well, right? But there's no documentation on those workflows. So it would be very difficult to automate and very difficult to train somebody else to do it. 3 points if some standard operating procedures exist, right? Which I think probably most organizations have a few of these things, right? And 5 points if you have every workflow fully documented and repeatable. In other words, it's documented, you can pass it on to somebody else and they could do that exact same function. Question number 5, what is the level of awareness around automation tools? Number 1, no awareness or misunderstanding, 1 point. 3 points if you know that tools exist, right? But you're maybe not using them or using them to the maximum capability. And 5 points if you're actively pursuing process automation. Question number 6, how consistent and repeatable are your team's tasks? 1 point if tasks vary widely. In other words, on any given day, you don't know what you're going to do, right? Or your team doesn't know exactly what they're going to do. It just varies. 3 points if it's mostly consistent, and 5 points if it's highly repetitive and perfect for automation. All right, moving on to the technology stack. Question number 7, what is your current state of your digital tool usage? 1 point, paper, manual process dominates. It could be digital, right? But it's manual. 3 points, a mix of digital and manual tools. And 5 points, you're fully digital first and utilizing cloud native tools. Question number 8, how well integrated are your existing systems? 1 point if most of your IT is siloed. So your case management system is not integrated with your billing system, which is not integrated with your time entry system, for example. 3 points if you have partial integrations. Maybe you're using Zapier or some of these other tools to integrate, or APIs. 5 points if you have strong integration. So your software is API ready. So we could build in AI to connect to these systems because they're mature enough to accept an API integration. Question number 9, how accessible is your data across systems? 1 point if your data is scattered, right? Which is not uncommon today, right? We've got data all the way down to endpoints and centralized in cloud systems and on servers, but 1 point. 3 points if some reporting is available, so you have access to data, you can kind of report on it. And 5 points if you have easy access to data across all of your systems. One of the biggest things, right, to help maximize the use of AI is access to the data, right? And having access to clean data to be able to use AI to help us analyze that and make good decisions. But it becomes very difficult if that data is scattered all over. All right, moving on to team culture. And again, like I said, these are business problems, not technology problems. But question number 10, how open is your team to organizational change, right? Now, 1 point if they are fearful, right, or resistant, which again is not uncommon, right? People have this belief that AI is after jobs or that AI is here to take over the world. We all watch far too many science fiction movies, right, for this not to be part of it. 3 points if your team is cautiously open, but maybe a little nervous. 5 points if your organization, your team embraces innovation and wants better technology for their jobs. Question number 11, what is the team's general tech confidence? 1 point if overall your team has low or basic technical literacy. 3 points if the team is average and possibly can learn with a little bit of support and education. And 5 points if your team is highly comfortable with advancing technology and tools like AI. Question number 12, how collaborative are your departments? Number 1, they're siloed, right? Accounting really doesn't talk to finance, who doesn't talk to marketing, who doesn't talk to operations. Communication's poor. 3 points if there is some collaboration on projects, and 5 points if you have a very open and cross-departmental culture, which is pretty rare. All right. Finally, we're moving on to compliance, security, and governance. Question number 13, what is your organization's level of security awareness? 1 point if you have little to no security posture in place. 3 points if you have basic cybersecurity tools, AV, MFA, or firewalls. And 5 points if you're policy-based and you have managed cybersecurity, compliance, and risk management for AI. Many of you guys are customers. For those of you that decline some of the cybersecurity controls, this is the type of stuff we're talking about. Question number 14, what is your compliance posture? Not everybody on this call has compliance regulation requirements. So 1 point if no compliance needs are known. 3 points if you're regulated, but maybe are lightly enforcing. And then 5 points if you are fully compliant, and that could be HIPAA, that could be SOC, that could be CMMC, could be FTC safeguards, right? And again, even if you're subjected to those things, you could still score yourself 3 points because you know you're regulated, but may not have all the controls in place. And the last question is, how developed are your data handling policies? How do you manage data? Number 1 point if it's ad hoc or you really don't have any policy in place. Number 2 or 3 points if you have some policies, but maybe not all are enforced. And then 5 points if you have a robust governance framework around handling data. All right, 4 minutes left. Try to rush through this, but add up your score. And generally, what we see is for organizations that have 0 to 25 total score out of 75, we consider that an AI novice maturity level, right? And so what we would recommend is to maybe start out with a couple of pilot automations, but really focusing on awareness, education, and some simple things. If you fell into that AI aware maturity stage, which is maybe 26 to 50 points, you may be ready for some more foundational use cases or potentially even some departmental wide rollouts of some of these things. And finally, if you fall into what I consider AI enabled, scoring anywhere from 51 to 75, you may be mature enough to pursue cross-functional AI scaling, which means across different systems, not just different departments. I'm not going to ask you to post your score in the chat, but I would suggest that if it's of interest to you, right, that we have a conversation. Again, here's the salesy part. Hopefully the rest was useful, but is that we set up what we call the AI growth and profit assessment. We go into those readiness things, and then times 10, right? We help identify business problems that AI could be useful for and help build out an ROI strategy. We help build out a governance and strategic C-level strategy, road mapping, and handling all the pieces regarding liability and legal and all that stuff. We build out the workflows. We help build out your automation roadmaps, and of course, build out the plan. Underneath, we'll be calling, people to try to have these conversations. But if you want to do it right away, please scan the QR code, and let's schedule it. But I have two more minutes. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything that might be useful for everybody to talk through? As people think through that, we're identifying agenda items for the next conversation. And what we've been seeing is a lot of organizations are super interested in this stuff. They're just not ready, right? Their data's not ready. Their policies aren't ready. So we may start to deep dive into each of these readiness items with a little more clarity. But I'm always open to topics. Anybody have any questions at all or anything that they want to talk about? Matcha, caramel lattes.
Did you guys get anything out of this discussion? Anything stand out to you guys?
Rob, I'll make sure that underneath follows up with the link. Thanks, Angie.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, I will let everybody go. And again, you all know how to get a hold of me. Underneath will follow up as well, but everybody knows how to reach me. So thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.